Lillian Alden had spent the last 8 years perfecting the art of pretense. She was the wife of one of the most feared and respected defense attorneys in the state, a man who could dismantle a prosecution with a single phrase, who could twist the law until justice was nothing but a mirage. To the outside world, their marriage was flawless. Victor was charming, eloquent, and deeply intelligent. In court, he was relentless. At home, he was precise. There was never a hair out of place, never a word spoken in haste. Their house was a work of art, spacious, elegant, and curated to reflect perfection. Victor liked things that way, orderly, predictable. Lillian had once loved him for that, but love had turned into something else over the years. A quiet, creeping claustrophobia. The realization that her life had become an exhibit in Victor's carefully crafted reality. She was expected to be the perfect wife, always poised, always graceful, always an extension of his power. And she had played her role well. Until Daniel. Daniel was everything Victor was not. A sculptor who worked with his hands, whose laugh was unfiltered and genuine. Their affair had begun in stolen moments, in whispered phone calls and secret hotel rooms. At first, it had felt like a dream, until she realized how desperately she needed it to be real. But Victor was not a man who tolerated deception. The night it happened, Lillian had just come home from one of their secret meetings. She had been careful, so careful, but the moment she stepped through the front door, she knew something was wrong. The house was too quiet, the air too still. Victor stood in the center of the living room, dressed in his usual sharp suit, the glint of his wedding ring catching the dim light. "Did you have a nice evening?" he asked. Her heart seized. She forced a smile. "Yes, I." She never finished the sentence. A sharp, burning pain blossomed at the back of her skull, and the world went black. Lillian woke up in a room that didn't exist. She sat up too fast, her head pounding. Her breath caught in her throat as she took in her surroundings. The walls were glass. Not windows, glass walls, seamless and impenetrable. There was a bed, a chair, a small table with a glass of water. No doors, no exits. She scrambled to her feet, hands pressed against the smooth surface. Beyond the glass was a dimly lit space, an empty corridor stretching in both directions. A speaker crackled to life. "Good morning, Lillian." Victor's voice, calm, measured. She turned sharply, searching for him, but there was only her own reflection staring back. "Victor," she said, her voice hoarse. "What is this?" "A trial," he said simply. "You are accused of betrayal. The evidence is overwhelming." Her blood ran cold. "You're insane." There was a pause, then a soft chuckle. "Am I? You always told me I could win any case. I suppose we're about to find out if that's true." Panic clawed at her chest. "You can't do this. People will look for me." "Who?" His tone was almost amused. "Your family is out of state. Your friends are, well, let's be honest, Lillian. You don't have many. And Daniel?" A beat of silence. "He won't be looking for you." A cold wave of terror washed over her. "Where is he?" Victor ignored the question. "The rules are simple. If you can prove your innocence, you will be released." She pressed her hands against the glass. "You already know the truth, Victor." "Yes," he agreed, "but I want to hear you defend yourself." The speaker clicked off, leaving her in silence. Lillian backed away from the glass, her pulse hammering. Her mind raced through every possibility. Was there a way out? Some flaw in the design? But Victor wasn't careless. He never had been. She had underestimated him. Now, she was his captive, and the trial had only just begun. Lillian's breath came in sharp gasps as she pressed her palms against the glass, searching for any weakness in the seamless enclosure. Her mind raced with questions, her heart pounded with terror. Victor had always been precise, controlled, but this was madness. A soft hum echoed through the room, and the speaker crackled to life once more. "You look restless," Victor's voice observed, smooth as silk. "That's understandable. This is unfamiliar territory for you." She clenched her fists. "Let me out of here, Victor. This isn't a game." A pause. Then, a chuckle. "But it is, Lillian. A very important one." She swallowed the lump in her throat, forcing herself to think. "People will come looking for me." "No, they won't. You're a social ghost, my love. Who would even think to check? And Daniel, well, he's dealing with his own predicament." Lillian's stomach dropped. "What did you do to him?" "Let's stay focused on you, shall we?" Victor's voice took on a sharper edge. "You've been accused of betrayal, and in my world, the accused is given a fair trial. So let's begin." A sudden hiss sounded, and from the ceiling, a vent released a fine mist. The air grew thick with a faintly metallic scent. Panic set in as Lillian stumbled backward, covering her mouth. Her skin tingled where the mist settled. "What the hell is this?" "Relax, it's not poison," Victor reassured her. "Just something to sharpen your mind, heighten your instincts. You'll need them for what's coming next." The lights in the room flickered, and then darkness. A moment later, a dim red glow illuminated the room. Shadows stretched unnaturally, giving the space an eerie, surreal quality. And then she saw it. A figure, just beyond the glass, standing in the corridor. Unmoving, watching. Lillian's breath hitched. "Who's there?" No answer. Her pulse thundered in her ears. The figure tilted its head slightly, as though studying her. Then, in a slow, deliberate motion, it reached up and pressed a blood-stained hand against the glass. Lillian staggered back, heart hammering against her ribs. "Victor, what is this?" The speaker crackled. "Your first test. Good luck." The sound of a latch shifting filled the room. The glass panel before her began to slide open. Lillian's trial had truly begun. Lillian's heartbeat thundered in her ears as the glass panel slid open, revealing the darkened corridor beyond. Her breath came in short, panicked gasps, her eyes flicking to the blood-stained handprint on the glass. The figure that had left it was gone, but the imprint remained, a chilling reminder that she was no longer alone. She hesitated. Stepping forward felt like surrendering to Victor's twisted game, but standing still meant accepting captivity. She had to move. She had to fight. Barefoot, she stepped past the threshold, her skin prickling against the cool air beyond. The corridor was dimly lit, the glow of red emergency lights casting eerie shadows along the walls. The silence was suffocating. The speaker crackled to life again. "Good," Victor's voice purred. "You're learning." "Victor, stop this," she snapped, fists clenched at her sides. "You've made your point. Just let me go." A chuckle. "Oh, my dear, we're just getting started. You want freedom? Then earn it." A loud click echoed down the hall. The ground beneath her feet vibrated slightly as mechanical locks disengaged. Then, a door at the far end of the corridor swung open. Lillian swallowed hard. Whatever was waiting for her beyond that door was part of Victor's test. She had no choice but to play along, for now. She moved cautiously, each step a battle against the terror clawing at her insides. When she reached the open doorway, she paused, straining to see what lay beyond. The room inside was small and stark, furnished only with a wooden chair and a single overhead light. A table stood against the far wall, an old-fashioned tape recorder resting on its surface. The moment she stepped inside, the door slammed shut behind her. Lillian whirled, her hands flying to the handle, It wouldn't budge. Test number 1, Victor announced. Confession. A click, and the tape recorder whirred to life. Lillian's own voice crackled through the small speaker. "I love you," she heard herself whisper. Her blood ran cold. It was a recording of her and Daniel. "You make me feel alive," her voice continued. "With Victor, it's like I'm drowning. But you're my air." Tears stung her eyes as she turned her gaze upward. "You spied on me." "Of course," Victor replied smoothly. "Now, let's get to the real game. I want you to confess, Lillian. Admit your guilt. Say the words, and perhaps I'll consider mercy." Lillian's nails dug into her palms. "And if I refuse?" Silence stretched between them for a moment. Then, a low hum vibrated through the air, and the floor beneath her feet suddenly felt wrong. She barely had time to react before the ground began to shift, tilting at a dangerous angle. Lillian stumbled forward, catching herself on the chair as the room's equilibrium spiraled. The walls groaned. The air felt heavier. "What's happening?" she screamed. "Simple physics," Victor mused. "Tilt the room, and gravity does the rest. Confess, and it stops." Lillian gritted her teeth. "No." The incline grew steeper. The chair slid away, crashing into the wall. The tape recorder toppled, sending her own treacherous words spilling from its speakers. "I love you. You make me feel alive." She clenched her jaw. This was Victor's game, his manipulation. If she confessed, he would own her. He would have one. So she did the only thing she could. She forced herself to stand. Her muscles screamed in protest as she straightened, fighting against the pull of gravity. If Victor expected her to break, he was sorely mistaken. She braced herself against the slanting floor, breathing through the panic. Silence filled the space. Then, Victor sighed. Stubborn, as always. "Fine, we'll continue. But know this, each refusal will come at a cost." The room suddenly lurched back to normal, the abrupt shift sending Lillian sprawling to the floor. Her breath came in ragged gulps as she stared at the ceiling, her body aching. Victor's voice returned, colder now. "Next test. Be ready." The lights flickered. The door creaked open once more. And Lillian knew the worst was yet to come. Lillian lay on the cold floor, her body aching from the ordeal of the last test. The weight of exhaustion settled over her, but she couldn't afford to surrender to it. Victor had made it clear. This was far from over. The door that had creaked open loomed in the dim light. Beyond it was another challenge, another cruel game in her husband's twisted trial. Lillian took a shaky breath and forced herself to her feet. Her legs felt weak, but she willed them to move forward. She stepped through the doorway, and the moment she crossed the threshold, the door slammed shut behind her. The sound echoed through the space, sending a chill down her spine. The room before her was larger than the last, dimly lit, with a strange, mechanical hum vibrating through the walls. At the center stood a chair, stark, metallic, and ominous. Victor's voice filtered through unseen speakers. "Sit." Lillian's heart pounded. "No." A sudden burst of static crackled through the speakers, sharp and grating. The walls vibrated with the force of the sound, sending pain lancing through her skull. She clamped her hands over her ears, gritting her teeth. "Sit," Victor repeated, his tone calm, patient, mocking. Gasping through the pain, Lillian staggered toward the chair. She had no choice. With every ounce of defiance she had left, she lowered herself onto the cold metal seat. The moment she did, thick straps snapped over her wrists and ankles, locking her in place. "Good girl," Victor murmured. "Now, let's see how well you remember." A screen flickered to life before her. Static rippled across it before an image appeared. Her and Daniel, a memory from months ago. They were in a hotel room, sunlight spilling through sheer curtains, tangled in sheets, laughing, kissing. It was a moment of stolen happiness, but now, under Victor's gaze, it felt like a death sentence. "Tell me, Lillian," Victor mused. "What did you feel in that moment?" She swallowed hard. "I felt free." A sharp electric current pulsed through the chair, searing pain into her spine. She screamed, jerking against the restraints, but they held firm. "Wrong answer," Victor said coldly. "Try again." Her breath came in ragged gasps. She clenched her teeth, fighting back tears. "I don't regret it." Another jolt of electricity surged through her body, longer this time, sending her muscles into violent spasms. When it finally ceased, she slumped in the chair, her entire body trembling. "I suggest you start telling the truth, darling," Victor said, almost bored. "You always prided yourself on honesty, didn't you?" She squeezed her eyes shut. She wouldn't break. She couldn't. Victor sighed. "Perhaps you need an incentive." The screen shifted to another image. This one was live footage. Daniel, bound and gagged, bruises mottling his face. He sat in a chair similar to hers, his head drooping as if he barely clung to consciousness. "Daniel," Lillian choked out. "Yes, he's still with us," Victor confirmed. "For now, but his fate depends on you. One more wrong answer, Lillian, and his punishment will be much harsher." Panic clawed at her chest. "You bastard! Let him go." Victor ignored her outburst. "Let's try this again. What did you feel in that moment with him?" Lillian's mind raced. If she lied, Daniel would suffer. If she told the truth, she would be giving Victor the satisfaction of her submission. She took a deep breath and met the camera's gaze. "I felt safe." A long silence stretched between them. The screen remained frozen on Daniel's battered form, the only sound the steady hum of the machinery surrounding her. Then, the restraints on her wrists and ankles clicked open. She barely had time to react before the chair tilted backward, sending her sprawling onto the cold floor. Gasping, she scrambled to her hands and knees, her body still shuddering from the residual shocks. Victor's voice was soft now, almost affectionate. "That wasn't so hard, was it?" Lillian didn't answer. She glared up at the camera, hatred burning in her chest. "Rest for now," Victor said. "The final trial is yet to come." The screen went dark. The room fell silent. Lillian sat there, her body aching, her mind racing. She had survived this round, but at what cost? She knew one thing for certain. If she was going to escape, she would have to do it soon, before the next test broke her completely. Lillian's breaths came in short, shallow bursts as she sat in the dimly lit room, her body aching from the torment Victor had inflicted. She knew he wasn't done. The worst was still ahead. She had lost count of how long she had been trapped in this nightmare. The concept of time had melted away, replaced only by pain, fear, and the suffocating weight of Victor's voice haunting every corner of her confinement. But there was one thing she knew. This was her last chance to fight back. The speakers crackled again. "Are you ready, my love?" Victor's voice was smooth, almost tender, as if they were simply having a late-night conversation in their bed. "This is the final test. If you pass, you walk free. If you fail, well, you won't have to worry about much anymore." Lillian forced herself to stand, gripping the wall for support. Just get it over with. A low chuckle, always so eager. Step through the door, then. A mechanical click echoed in the room, and a panel slid open, revealing yet another dark corridor. Lillian took a deep breath and stepped forward, her bare feet making no sound against the cold floor. The moment she entered, The door shut behind her with a final, decisive clang. She was trapped. Again. The corridor was longer than the others, stretching endlessly into darkness. Then, suddenly, a single spotlight illuminated a glass cage at the center of a vast chamber. Inside the cage sat Daniel. Lillian's heart leaped into her throat. He was alive. Barely. His head hung forward, his arms tied behind his back, his shirt torn and bloodied. Lillian. His voice was hoarse, barely a whisper. She ran to the cage, pressing her hands against the glass. Daniel, hold on. I'll get you out. Victor's voice interrupted her desperate plea. Not so fast. This is the final trial, Lillian, the one that truly matters. A second spotlight flickered on, illuminating a pedestal just a few feet away. On it rested a gun. Lillian's breath caught. You have a choice, Victor continued. Kill Daniel, and I let you go. I give you your freedom, your life back. No more cages. No more torment. Just you, walking away, unharmed. Lillian's hands clenched into fists. You're insane. Or, Victor went on, ignoring her. You can refuse. You can try to free him. But I assure you, Lillian, the moment you do, I will activate the gas in that cage. He will die in minutes, choking, suffocating, and you will watch every second of it. A cold sweat broke over her skin. You wouldn't. Wouldn't I? Victor's voice was almost amused. You should know by now I always follow through. Lillian turned back to Daniel. His eyes, barely open, met hers. Don't listen to him, Daniel whispered. Run. Tears welled in her eyes. I can't leave you. Then you die too. Lillian turned to the pedestal, the gun gleaming under the light. A simple pull of the trigger, and she would be free. But at what cost? Could she really live with herself after taking Daniel's life? She exhaled sharply. No, she couldn't. Lillian lunged toward the control panel on the side of the glass cage. If she could find a way to disable it. A sharp alarm blared through the room. Victor sighed. I knew you'd be difficult. Gas hissed from vents above Daniel's head. No. Lillian slammed her fists against the control panel, searching for a way to stop it. Her fingers fumbled against the buttons. Nothing worked. Panic surged through her as Daniel coughed, his body writhing in agony. Desperation took over. She spun toward the pedestal and grabbed the gun. Not to kill Daniel, but to shatter the glass. She aimed at the center and pulled the trigger. The bullet struck, cracks spidering through the surface. Another shot. More cracks. Daniel slumped forward, his body weakening. Lillian let out a cry and fired again. The glass shattered. She rushed in, pulling Daniel out just as he collapsed into her arms. He was barely breathing. She pressed her hands to his face. Stay with me, please. Victor's voice cut through the chaos. You surprised me, my love. I didn't think you had it in you. Lillian's blood ran cold as she heard a door unlock behind her. Heavy footsteps echoed in the chamber. He was coming. She had no more time to think. Slinging Daniel's arm over her shoulder, she hauled him forward, moving toward the door on the opposite side of the chamber. It was unlocked. Open. Freedom was just ahead. Victor's footsteps grew louder. Lillian turned her head just in time to see him step into the light, calm, composed, the faintest smirk on his lips. He raised a gun of his own. You failed, Lillian, he murmured, and failures must be punished. A shot rang out. Pain exploded through Lillian's side, white-hot and searing. She stumbled but didn't stop. She couldn't. Gritting her teeth, she pushed forward, dragging Daniel through the doorway. More shots. Sparks flew as bullets struck metal. The hallway was blurring around her. Blood ran down her side, soaking into her clothes. But she didn't stop. Then, light. Blinding, bright light. Fresh air hit her skin like a shockwave. The scent of the ocean, the sound of waves crashing against cliffs. She barely had time to register it before she collapsed onto the ground, Daniel's limp body beside her. She heard distant shouting, other voices, the wail of sirens. Victor's plan had crumbled. She had won. And then, finally, darkness took her. When she woke, it was to the rhythmic beep of a heart monitor and the sterile scent of antiseptic. Her eyes fluttered open to find herself in a hospital room, sunlight streaming through the window. Daniel lay in the bed beside her, breathing steadily. Alive. A soft voice spoke from the doorway. "You're lucky to be alive." Lillian turned her head slowly. A detective stood there, arms crossed. "Your husband is in custody. He won't be hurting anyone else." Relief crashed over her like a tidal wave. Victor was gone. She closed her eyes, exhaling shakily. For the first time in what felt like forever, she was safe and free.